She had learned to disappear in crowded rooms. Not physically. Lena Volkov stood 5'9" in heels, her frame draped in emerald silk that caught every flicker of chandelier light. But she knew how to become invisible in the way that mattered. How to smile without being seen. How to exist without being remembered. The gala was suffocating. Marble floors, champagne flutes, men in tuxedos who wore their wealth like armor. She moved through it all with practiced ease, her glass untouched, her expression serene. No one knew why she was really there. No one ever did. Her mother's face flickered behind her eyes, pale, hollow, begging in a hospital bed she could no longer afford. The debt collectors had stopped calling. They'd started showing up instead. 3 months. That's all she had left before they came for the house. Before they came for her. So Lena had done what desperate women do. She'd found another way. The job was simple. Attend the gala. Slip a listening device beneath the table of a man named Nikolai Volkov. No relation. Just cruel coincidence. Walk out. Disappear. $10,000 wired by morning. She'd been promised it would be easy. It wasn't. Because the moment she stepped into the ballroom, she felt it. The weight of someone's gaze. Heavy. Deliberate. Unwavering. She didn't look. Not yet. But her heart knew before her mind did. She'd been seen. Before we go on, tell us, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. Lena moved toward the bar, her heels clicking softly against marble. She ordered water, not wine. She needed clarity tonight. Around her, voices rose and fell like waves. Laughter, negotiation, the hollow politeness of people who traded in secrets. She glanced across the room, and there he was, Dmitry Kozlov. She knew his face the way everyone in this world did. Not from photographs, those were rare, but from whispers, from warnings, from the kind of fear that lived in silence. He stood near the far wall, surrounded by men who looked like shadows given form. His suit was black, perfectly tailored, but it was a stillness that unnerved her. Everyone else in the room moved. He didn't. He simply existed, and the world bent around him. His eyes were on her. Dark, unreadable, patient. Lena's pulse quickened. She turned away, forcing herself to breathe. She had a job to do. She couldn't afford distraction. Couldn't afford mistakes. But when she glanced back again, he was closer. Not walking toward her. Just closer. As if space itself had rearranged to bring him nearer. She felt the air shift. And then she heard his voice. You're not supposed to be here. It wasn't a question. It was a fact, delivered in a tone that left no room for denial. Lena turned slowly, her expression calm even as her mind raced. Up close, he was worse. Not because he was cruel-looking. He wasn't. His features were sharp, almost elegant. Dark hair swept back, a jaw that could have been carved from stone. But his eyes, they saw too much. I was invited, she said softly. By whom? She didn't answer. Couldn't. The man who'd hired her hadn't given her a name to use. Dmitry tilted his head, studying her the way a wolf studies movement in the trees. You're not a socialite. You're not a journalist. You're not one of Volkov's usual acquisitions. The way he said it made her skin prickle. So I'll ask again, he continued, his voice dropping lower. Why are you here? Lena met his gaze, held it. I could ask you the same thing. Something flickered in his expression. Not anger. Something quieter. Curiosity, perhaps. Or amusement. I own this room, he said simply. Everyone in it. Every breath. Every lie. She believed him. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the faint trace of smoke and cedar on his clothes. His hand moved, not toward her, but past her, and he plucked the glass of water from her grip. He didn't drink from it, just held it, examining it as if it might reveal her secrets. You're afraid, he said. No, you should be. And then, before she could stop herself, before fear could silence her tongue, Lena leaned in just slightly and whispered something in Russian. It was a phrase her grandmother had taught her. Old. Dangerous. The kind of words you only spoke if you wanted to invoke ghosts. Asterisk Tyanis Naish. Kuya na samam dele. Asterisk. Asterisk you don't know who I really am. Asterisk. But it wasn't the words that mattered. It was the accent, the inflection, the weight of history buried in every syllable. Dmitri froze. His entire body went still. Not the stillness of control, the stillness of shock. The glass slipped from his fingers. It shattered against the marble floor, and the sound cut through the ballroom like a gunshot. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. But Dmitri didn't notice. He was staring at her as if she'd risen from the grave. His face had gone pale. His jaw tight. His eyes, those dark, unreadable eyes, were suddenly wide, searching her face for something she didn't understand. Who are you? He breathed. Lena's heart hammered. She didn't know what she'd done. Didn't know why those words had affected him. But she knew one thing. She'd made a mistake. Dmitri turned sharply, his hand lifting. Two men appeared instantly at his side, broad-shouldered and silent. Find out who she is, he said, his voice low and lethal. Everything. Where she came from. Why she's here. Who sent her. His eyes locked on Hayes one last time. And don't let her leave. The men moved toward her. Lena ran. She didn't think. Didn't plan. She just turned and pushed through the crowd, her emerald dress a streak of color against black tuxedos and glittering gowns. Behind her, she heard shouting. Footsteps. The crack of a door being forced open. She made it to the hallway, to the stairwell. Her heels slipped on the marble, and she kicked them off, running barefoot down cold stone steps. But even as she ran, even as her lungs burned and her mind screamed, one thought remained. Dmitri Kozlov had looked at her like he'd seen a ghost. And ghosts, Lena knew, never stayed buried for long. She didn't make it to the street. They caught her in the underground parking garage, between two black cars that gleamed like predators in the dim light. She'd almost reached the exit, could see the glow of streetlights beyond the gate, when hands closed around her arms. Not rough, not cruel, but immovable. Lena fought anyway, thrashed and twisted and tried to scream, but one of the men, the taller one with a scar across his jaw, simply pressed a hand over her mouth and whispered, "Don't. You'll only make it worse." She was lifted, carried, placed into the back of a car that smelled of leather and expensive cologne. The door closed. Dmitri was already inside. He sat across from her, his posture relaxed, his hands folded in his lap. But his eyes, they hadn't stopped burning. "Where did you learn that phrase?" he asked quietly. Lena pressed herself against the far door, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Let me go." "Answer the question." "I don't owe you anything." "You owe me everything." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You walked into my world. You spoke words that haven't been spoken in 20 years. You looked at me with eyes I thought I'd never see again." Lena's heart stuttered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Liar." The car began to move. Panic clawed at her chest. She reached for the door handle, but it didn't budge. Locked. Of course it was locked. "Where are you taking me?" Dmitri leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. In the low light, his face looked sharper, harder, but there was something else there too. Something raw. "Somewhere safe," he said. "Safe for who?" "For you." She didn't believe him. Couldn't. Men like Dmitri Kozlov didn't protect people. They used them, broke them, discarded them. "I'll scream," she said. "No one will hear you." "I'll run." "You won't make it far." "Then kill me and be done with it." His jaw tightened. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or regret. "I'm not going to kill you," he said softly. "Then what do you want?" He didn't answer. The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Outside the tinted windows, the city blurred past, lights and shadows and lives she'd never touch again. Lena's mind raced. She thought of her mother, of the debt, of the $10,000 she'd never receive now. She thought of the man who'd hired her, and whether he'd even care that she'd failed. She thought of Dimitri's face when she'd whispered those words. Asterisk, you don't know who I really am. Asterisk. But she didn't know either. Didn't understand why a simple phrase in Russian had made a man like him turn pale. My grandmother taught me that, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Dimitri's head snapped up. She used to say it when I was young. When I'd ask about where we came from. She'd smile and tell me, Ty enis naish, Qya samamdele. Like it was a joke, a riddle. Your grandmother. His voice was tight, controlled. What was her name? Lena hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her not to answer, not to give this man anything he could use against her. But something in his eyes stopped her. Desperation. Hope. Grief. Katya, she whispered. Katya Volkov. The car swerved. Dimitri's hand shot out, bracing against the seat to keep from being thrown forward. His driver muttered an apology, but Dimitri didn't seem to hear. He was staring at Lena as if the world had just fractured around him. Katya Volkov, he repeated, his voice hollow. Katya. He turned away, his hand rising to his face. For a long moment, he didn't speak, didn't move, just sat there, breathing like a man who'd forgotten how. When he finally looked back at her, his expression had changed. It was softer, broken, terrified. You're her granddaughter, he said. It wasn't a question. Lena nodded slowly, her pulse pounding in her ears. Dimitri closed his eyes, and then he did something she never expected. He laughed. Not the kind of laughter that came from joy, the kind that came from disbelief, from the universe delivering a punchline too cruel to be real. Of course, he murmured. Of course you are. The car stopped. Lena looked out the window. They were no longer in the city. The lights had given way to darkness, and beyond the glass, she could see the outline of a massive estate. Gates, walls, guards stationed at every corner. A fortress, or a prison. The door opened. One of Dimitri's men offered his hand. Lena ignored it, stepping out on her own. The gravel was cold beneath her bare feet. Dimitri exited behind her, his movements slow, deliberate. He looked at the house, his house, she assumed, and something flickered across his face. Resignation, maybe. You'll stay here, he said. Like hell I will. You don't have a choice. You can't just. I can. He turned to face her fully, and the weight of his gaze pinned her in place. There are people looking for you now. People who will hurt you if they find you. People who will use you to get to me. Why would anyone use me to get to you? I don't even know you. You will, he said quietly, and then he walked toward the house, leaving her standing in the cold with 2 armed men at her back and nowhere left to run. Lena's hands curled into fists. She had come to this gala to save her mother, to pay off a debt, to survive. Instead, she had whispered a ghost's words to a man who looked at her like she was one. And now she was trapped. The room they gave her was too beautiful to be a cell. High ceilings, silk curtains, a bed large enough to drown in. There were fresh flowers on the dresser, white roses, their petals soft and perfect. The kind of flowers you gave someone you were trying to impress, or someone you were trying to keep. Lena stood at the window, staring out at the grounds below. Gardens stretched into darkness, manicured and cold. Beyond them, walls. Always walls. She'd tried the door. Locked, of course. She'd tried the window. Reinforced glass. Unbreakable. She'd tried screaming. No one came. So now she just stood there, her bare feet cold against hardwood, her emerald dress hanging off her like a costume she couldn't remove. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt strange here. Thick, slow. When the door finally opened, she spun around, her heart leaping into her throat. Dmitri stood in the doorway. He'd changed. The tuxedo was gone, replaced by dark slacks and a white shirt rolled to his elbows. He looked tired. Human, almost, but no less dangerous. "You should eat," he said, nodding toward a tray one of his men had placed on the table. "Soup, bread, water. I'm not hungry." "You haven't eaten in 12 hours. How would you know?" "I know everything that happens in this house." Lena crossed her arms, her jaw tight. "Then you know I want to leave." "Yes." "And you can't." "You keep saying that." Her voice rose, sharp and brittle. "But you won't tell me why. You won't tell me anything." Dmitri stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He moved slowly, carefully, like a man approaching something fragile. "Sit," he said. "No, please." The word surprised her, not because it was unexpected, but because it sounded genuine. Reluctantly, Lena sat on the edge of the bed. Dmitri took the chair by the window, his hands folded in his lap. For a long moment, he didn't speak, just looked at her, his dark eyes searching her face for something she couldn't name. "You said your grandmother's name was Katia Volkov," he said finally. Lena nodded. "Did she ever talk before? About Russia?" "Sometimes. Not often." Lena's voice softened. "She'd tell me stories when I couldn't sleep. About snow that never melted. About forests so deep you could walk for days and never see the sun. About—" She hesitated. "About a man she loved once. A long time ago." Dimitri's breath hitched. "She never told me his name," Lena continued. "But she'd get this look in her eyes when she talked about him. Like she was seeing someone who wasn't there anymore." "What happened to him?" "I don't know." She'd always stop before the end, like the ending was too painful to say out loud. Dmitri closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. "I knew your grandmother," he said quietly. Lena's heart stopped. "I was 17 when I met her. She was 19. Beautiful. Stubborn. Too brave for her own good." A faint, broken smile touched his lips. "She used to say that phrase to me. *Tienes naish. Qyana samandele de *, she'd whisper it when we were alone. When the world thought she was just another girl from the village, and I was just another boy with nothing." He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands trembling. "But she wasn't just a girl, and I wasn't just a boy. We were everything. And then the war came, the family came, and I had to choose." "Choose what?" Lena whispered. "Between her and survival." The words hung in the air like smoke. "I chose survival," Dmitri said, his voice breaking. "I left her, told her I'd come back, promised I'd find her when it was safe." "And did you?" "No." He looked up at her, and the pain in his eyes was unbearable. "By the time I went back, she was gone. Everyone said she'd fled, that she'd disappeared into the West and never looked back." Lena's chest tightened. "She came to America, had a daughter, my mother. And you. And me." Dmitri stood abruptly, turning away. His shoulders shook. For a moment, Lena thought he might break entirely. "I looked for her," he said hoarsely. "For years, decades. I used every resource I had, every connection, every favor, but she'd buried herself so deep." He laughed bitterly. "She didn't want to be found." Lena didn't know what to say, didn't know how to process the fact that this man, this cold, terrifying man, had loved her grandmother, that her grandmother had loved him back. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked. Dmitri turned to face her. "Because the moment you spoke those words, every enemy I've ever made will start asking questions. They'll wonder who you are, why you matter, and when they find out—" He didn't finish. He didn't need to. "So I'm bait," Lena said flatly. "No." His voice was fierce. "You're protected." I don't want your protection. You don't have a choice. Stop saying that. She stood, her hands curling into fists. Anger flooded her, hot and sharp and uncontrollable. You don't get to decide my life, she said. You don't get to lock me in a room and tell me it's for my own good. You don't get to. I loved her. The words stopped her cold. Dmitri stepped closer, his eyes burning. I loved her more than I've ever loved anything in this world. And I lost her. Do you understand? I lost her because I was weak. Because I chose fear over her. He was close now. Too close. And now you're here, he whispered. Her blood. Her voice. Her eyes. His hand rose, trembling, and for a moment Lena thought he might touch her face. But he didn't. He pulled back, his jaw tight. I won't lose you two, he said. And then he walked out, leaving Lena alone with the weight of his grief and the echo of a love that had outlived the woman who'd carried it. If this story has already found a place in your heart, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below for more stories that stay long after they end. Days blurred into one another. Lena stopped counting after the first week. She woke to sunlight streaming through silk curtains, ate meals she hadn't asked for, walked holes she wasn't allowed to leave. The house was vast, too vast, and every door she tried led to another locked room or another silent hallway. But she wasn't alone. Dmitri came every evening. At first, she'd refused to speak to him. She'd sit at the window, her back turned, her silence a weapon she wielded with precision. But he'd come anyway. He'd sit in the chair across from her and talk. About the gardens, about the weather, about nothing and everything. And slowly, so slowly she didn't notice at first, she started to listen. He told her about his childhood, about winters so cold the rivers froze solid, about his mother, who'd died when he was 12, and his father, who'd taught him that mercy was a luxury men like them couldn't afford. He told her about the family, the brotherhood, the blood oaths and the debts that could never be repaid. He told her about Katya, not all at once, in fragments, pieces of a story too painful to tell in full. She used to sneak out at night, he said one evening, his voice soft, climb through her window and meet me by the river. We'd sit there for hours, talking about the future, about leaving, about starting over somewhere no one knew our names. Lena glanced at him. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid. He looked at her, and the regret in his eyes was unbearable. And fear makes cowards of us all. She wanted to hate him. She should have hated him. But instead, she found herself asking, what was she like, really? Dmitri smiled. It was the first real smile she'd seen from him, and it transformed his face entirely. Stubborn, he said. Impossible. She'd argue with me about everything. Philosophy, politics, whether the sky was more blue or gray. He laughed quietly. She never let me win. Not once. Sounds familiar. You're like her. His gaze softened. More than you know. Lena looked away, her throat tight. She didn't want to be like her grandmother. Didn't want to carry the weight of a love that had destroyed her. But she could feel it happening anyway. The slow unraveling. The way her heart betrayed her every time Dmitri walked into the room. One night, she found herself in the library. She'd been exploring, testing doors, searching for weaknesses, when she'd stumbled upon it. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a fireplace that crackled softly in the corner, leather chairs that smelled of age and smoke. She'd meant to leave, but then she'd seen the book on the table. Anna Karenina. Her grandmother's favorite. Lena picked it up, her hands trembling. The pages were worn, the spine cracked. Someone had read this book 100 times, 1,000. She gave that to me, Dmitri said from the doorway. Lena spun around, clutching the book to her chest. He stepped inside, his movements slow and careful. The night before I left. She said it was so I'd remember her. Did it work? I never needed a book to remember her. He crossed the room, stopping a few feet away. In the firelight, his face looked softer, younger, human. "I read it every year," he said. "On the anniversary of the day I lost her." Lena swallowed hard. "When was that?" "March 14th. Her heart stopped. That's the day my grandmother died." Dmitri closed his eyes, his jaw tight. Lena set the book down, her hands shaking. "She never stopped loving you, did she?" "I don't know. I think she did." Lena's voice cracked. "I think that's why she never told me your name, because it hurt too much." Dimitri's breath hitched, and then, before she could stop herself, Lena stepped closer. She didn't touch him, didn't speak. She just stood there, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body, close enough to see the way his hands trembled at his sides. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for what you went through, for what you went through." Dimitri's eyes opened, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked at her not as a ghost or a memory or a replacement, but as herself. "You don't owe me an apology," he said softly. "Maybe not, but I'm giving you one anyway." His hand rose, hesitant, and this time he didn't pull back. His fingers brushed her cheek, light, trembling, reverent. "You're nothing like her," he murmured. "You just said I was." "No." His thumb traced the line of her jaw. "You're stronger, braver. You don't run from the hard things." "I tried to run from you." "And yet you're still here." Lena's breath caught. His hand slipped into her hair, and she felt the world tilt. "Dmitri." "Tell me to stop," he whispered. "Tell me this is wrong." She should have. She knew she should have. But instead, she leaned into his touch, her eyes closing, her heart pounding so loud she thought it might shatter. "I can't," she breathed. And then his lips were on hers, soft, desperate, aching. It wasn't a kiss born of passion. It was a kiss born of grief, of longing, of a love that had waited 20 years to be felt again. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers, his breath ragged. "I'm sorry," he said hoarsely. "Don't be. You deserve better than this, better than me." "Maybe." Lena opened her eyes, meeting his gaze. "But I'm still here." And in that moment, in the firelight and the silence and the weight of a love that had transcended death, something shifted between them. Something inevitable. Something terrifying. If you've ever felt torn between fear and love, you'll understand her. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below. Your support keeps stories like this alive. She began to see him differently after that night. Not as her captor, not as the man who'd stolen her freedom, but as someone just as trapped as she was. Dimitri's world was built on control, on power, on the ability to bend others to his will without ever bending himself. But with her, he was different. He was careful, tender, almost afraid. Every evening, he'd come to her room, and they'd talk. Sometimes about Katia, sometimes about nothing at all. And every night, when he left, she'd find herself counting the hours until he returned. It terrified her, this slow, inevitable fall. One afternoon, she found him in the garden. She hadn't meant to. She'd been walking the grounds, one of the few freedoms she'd been granted, when she'd heard his voice. Low, tense, angry. He was on the phone, pacing near the fountain, his free hand clenched into a fist. "I don't care what it costs," he said. "Find them, all of them, and make sure they understand. She's untouchable." A pause. "No, no half measures. If they so much as breathe her name, I want them gone." Lena's stomach twisted. He was protecting her. She knew that. But the way he said it, the cold, lethal certainty in his voice, reminded her of what he was. A killer, a king, a man who controlled life and death with a single word. When he hung up, he stood there for a long moment, his shoulders tight. Then he turned and saw her, His expression shifted, from fury to something softer, vulnerable. "How long have you been standing there?" he asked. "Long enough." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You weren't supposed to hear that." "I know what you are, Dmitri." Lena stepped closer, her arms crossed. "You don't have to hide it from me." "I'm not hiding it. I'm trying to keep you from seeing the worst of it." "Why?" "Because I don't want you to look at me the way everyone else does." His honesty startled her. She'd expected deflection, anger, but not this raw, aching vulnerability. "How do they look at you?" she asked quietly. "Like I'm a monster." "And are you?" He met her gaze, his jaw tight. "Yes." The word hung between them. Lena should have walked away, should have reminded herself that this man had taken her freedom, locked her away, and decided her fate without asking. But instead, she said, "I don't think you are." Dimitri's eyes widened. "I think you've done terrible things," she continued. "I think you've hurt people, maybe even killed them. But I don't think that's all you are." "Then what am I?" "A man who loved someone so much has spent his whole life grieving her." His breath caught. Lena stepped closer, close enough to see the way his hands trembled at his sides. "You're not a monster, Dmitri," she whispered. "You're just broken." He turned away, his shoulders shaking. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, so quietly she almost didn't hear it, he said, "I don't know how to be anything else." Lena's heart ached. She reached out, her hand brushing his arm. He flinched, not from pain, from surprise. "Let me help you," she said. "You can't." "Let me try." He looked at her then, his eyes wet, his expression raw. "Why?" he asked hoarsely. "Why would you want to help me?" "Because someone once loved you enough to leave. And I think you've been punishing yourself for it ever since." His jaw clenched, and then, without warning, he pulled her into his arms. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, aching, the kind of embrace that came from a man who'd been alone for too long. Lena froze for a moment, her breath catching. Then she wrapped her arms around him, holding him as tightly as he held her. They stood like that for what felt like hours, and when they finally pulled apart, something had changed. The walls between them had cracked, and neither of them knew how to rebuild them. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. She thought about her mother, about the debt, about the life she'd left behind. But mostly, she thought about Dmitri, about the way he'd looked at her in the garden, about the way his voice had broken when he'd said, "I don't know how to be anything else but asterisk." She thought about her grandmother, about the love that had consumed her, about the man she'd left behind and the life she'd built in his absence. And she wondered if history was repeating itself, if she was doomed to love a man who could never truly be hers. A soft knock pulled her from her thoughts. She sat up, her heart pounding. The door opened. Dmitri stood in the doorway, his silhouette backlit by the hallway light. "I couldn't sleep," he said quietly. "Neither could I." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then he crossed the room and sat on the edge of her bed, his hands clasped between his knees. "I keep thinking about what you said," he murmured. "About being broken." "Dmitri, you're right." He looked at her, his eyes dark and endless. "I've been broken for so long, I don't know how to be whole anymore." Lena reached out, her hand covering his. "Maybe you don't have to be whole," she said softly. "Maybe broken is enough." He turned his hand over, his fingers intertwining with hers. And then, so quietly she almost didn't hear it, he whispered, "Stay." "I'm not going anywhere." "No." His grip tightened. "I mean, stay with me. Tonight." Lena's breath caught. She should have said no, should have reminded herself that this was dangerous, that loving him was dangerous. But instead, she shifted over, making room. Dmitri lay down beside her, his body tense, his eyes never leaving hers. She reached out, her hand resting on his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat. "I'm here," she whispered. And for the first time in 20 years, Dmitri Kozlov let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to be alone anymore. She woke to silence. The bed beside her was empty, the sheets still warm. Lena sat up slowly, her heart sinking. He'd left. Of course he had. Men like Dmitri didn't stay. They took what they needed and disappeared before the morning could remind them of what they'd given away. But then she heard it. Voices. Low. Urgent. She slipped out of bed, pulling on the robe someone had left draped over the chair, and moved to the door. It was slightly ajar. Dmitri must have left it open when he'd gone. She pressed her ear to the gap. "Don't care what Volkov says. She's not leaving this house." Dmitri's voice. Had. Uncompromising. His threatening to go to the council. Another man, older, says you're keeping her prisoner, that it violates the accords. Volkov can go to hell. Dmitri. I said no. The finality in his voice made Lena's breath catch. Anyone who touches her answers to me. Anyone who even looks at her wrong answers to me. Is that clear? A pause. Yes, sir. Footsteps. Retreating. Lena pulled back from the door just as it opened fully. Dmitri stood there, still dressed in the clothes he'd worn the night before. His hair was disheveled, his eyes tired, but when he saw her, something softened in his expression. "You're awake," he said quietly. "Who's Volkov?" His jaw tightened. "Someone you don't need to worry about." "I heard you. He wants me out of here. He wants a lot of things he's not going to get." Lena crossed her arms. "Why does he care where I am?" Dmitri stepped inside, closing the door behind him. He moved to the window, his hands sliding into his pockets. For a long moment, he didn't speak. "Nikolai Volkov runs the Northern Territories," he said finally. "He's ambitious, reckless. He's been pushing for years to expand into my territory. And I'm leverage." "Your question mark." Dmitri turned to face her. "The night of the gala, you were supposed to plant a listening device on him. I know because one of my men found it, tucked into your clutch." Lena's stomach dropped. "Someone hired you to spy on him," Dmitri continued. "And now Volkov thinks I'm the one who sent you." "But you didn't." "No, but he doesn't believe that. And as long as you're here, he'll keep pushing, keep threatening, keep trying to find a way to use you against me." Lena's mind raced. "Then let me go. Send me away. I'll disappear." "No, Dmitri." "I said no." He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders. "Do you understand what will happen if I let you walk out of here? Volkov will find you, and when he does, he'll hurt you just to hurt me. Then what am I supposed to do? Stay locked in this house forever? If that's what it takes." She shoved him away, anger flaring hot and sharp. "You don't own me." "I know." "Then stop acting like you do." "I'm trying to keep you alive." His voice cracked on the last word. Lena froze. Dmitri turned away, his hands clenching into fists. "You think I want this? You think I want to keep you here? Watch you look at me like I'm your jailer. Then let me go." "I can't." He looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was unbearable. "I can't lose you the way I lost her." Lena's anger faltered. She saw it then. The truth beneath the control, beneath the power. He was terrified. Not of Volkov, not of his enemies, of losing her. "I'm not her," Lena said softly. "I know." "Then stop trying to save me from a past that isn't mine." Dmitri's breath shuddered. He reached for her, his hand cupping her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "I don't know how to do anything else," he whispered. Lena leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. Then let me teach you. His forehead pressed against hers, and in the space between their breaths, something shifted. Not healed, not whole, but closer. The days that followed were different. Dimitri stopped locking her door. He didn't tell her. She simply woke one morning and found the handle turned freely beneath her palm. It was a small freedom, but it meant everything. She began to explore the house more freely. The library, the gardens, the long, winding hallways that smelled of old wood and secrets. And Dimitri, he began to let her in. One evening, he took her to his office. It was a stark room. Dark wood, leather chairs, a desk covered in papers she didn't understand. But on the far wall, there was a painting. A woman. Dark hair, bright eyes, a smile that could melt stone. Lena's breath caught. That's her, Dimitri said quietly. Katya. Lena stepped closer, her heart pounding. She'd seen photographs of her grandmother, faded, worn things tucked into albums her mother kept hidden. But this was different. This was painted by someone who'd loved her. You commissioned this, Lena whispered. Years after she left, I'd hired an artist, described her from memory, made him repaint it a dozen times until it was perfect. Lena looked at him. Why keep it here, where no one can see it? Because she's mine. His voice was low, possessive, even in memory, even in death. Lena turned back to the painting. Her grandmother stared back at her. Timeless, beautiful, unbreakable. Do you see her when you look at me? Lena asked. Dimitri was silent for a long moment. Then he said, at first, yes, but not anymore. She glanced at him. Now I see you, he continued, and that terrifies me more than anything Katya ever did. Why? Because with her, I knew the ending. I knew I'd lose her. But with you. He stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers. With you, I don't know. And not knowing is worse. Lena's chest tightened. She turned fully, facing him, the hands still intertwined. What if I don't want you to know? She said softly. What if I want us to figure it out as we go? Dimitri's eyes searched hers. I don't know how to do that. Then learn. He pulled her closer, his free hand sliding into her hair. You're asking me to trust you, he murmured. Yes. To let go of control. Yes. To believe that this time, love won't destroy me. Lena's breath caught. Is that what this is? Love? Dimitri's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he might pull away, might retreat behind the walls he'd spent a lifetime building. But instead, he leaned down, his lips brushing her forehead. I don't know what else to call it, he whispered. And Lena, who'd spent her whole life running from the weight of her grandmother's story, finally stopped running. She rose on her toes, her lips meeting his. The kiss was different this time, not born of grief, not born of desperation, but of choice. When they pulled apart, Dimitri rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. I'm going to hurt you, he said hoarsely. I don't know how, or when, but I will. That's what men like me do. Maybe. Lena's hand rose, cupping his face. But I'm still here. Why? Because I choose to be. And in that moment, standing in a room filled with ghosts and memories and a painting of a woman who'd loved him first, Dmitri Kozlov allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, he deserved to be chosen. If your heart's racing too, take a breath. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below for more unforgettable love stories. The call came at 3 a.m. Lena woke to the sound of Dimitri's phone buzzing violently on the nightstand. He'd been sleeping beside her, something that had become routine in the weeks since she'd stopped fighting him. He grabbed it, his voice rough with sleep. What? Then his entire body went rigid. He sat up, his free hand clenching the sheets. When? A pause. How many? Another pause. I'm on my way. He ended the call and was out of bed before Lena could blink. What's wrong? She asked, sitting up. Dmitri was already pulling on clothes, dark jeans, a black shirt. His movements were sharp, efficient. The softness he'd shown her these past weeks was gone. Stay here, he said. Dmitri. I mean it, Lena. Don't leave this room. What happened? He stopped, his back to her. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he said, Volkov moved on one of my shipments. Killed 3 of my men. Lena's blood ran cold. Oh God! This is a declaration. Dmitri's voice was low, lethal. His testing me, seeing if I'm weak, if I'll let it slide. And will you? He turned, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. It wasn't anger. It was something far more dangerous. No, he said simply. And then he was gone. Lena sat in the silence, her heart pounding. She knew she should stay, knew she should listen, but something pulled at her. An instinct, a certainty. Something was wrong. She threw on clothes, jeans, a sweater, and slipped out of the room. The house was dark, empty. All of Dmitri's men had left with him, she realized. She moved quickly, her bare feet silent against cold floors. She didn't know where she was going, didn't have a plan, but then she heard it, a voice, low, familiar, coming from Dmitri's office. Lena approached slowly, pressing herself against the wall outside the door. Told you she'd be here, the voice said. Another voice responded, one she didn't recognize. And Kozlov? Gone, just like we planned. Lena's stomach dropped. She peeked around the doorframe. 2 men stood inside the office. One was tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar running down his neck. The other was older, his hair gray, his eyes cold. They were looking at the painting. At Katia. Burn it, the older man said. Burn all of it. By the time he gets back, I want this place empty. And the girl? Volkov wants her alive, but only barely. Lena's breath caught. She turned to run, and collided with someone behind her. A hand clamped over her mouth before she could scream. She thrashed, panic flooding her veins, but the grip was iron. Quiet, a voice hissed in her ear, or they'll hear you. She froze. The hand released her slowly, and she spun around. It was one of Dmitri's men, the younger one, the one with kind eyes who'd brought her meals in those first days. They're here for you, he whispered urgently. Volkov's men. They've been waiting. How? The shipment was bait. To draw Dmitri away. We have to get you out of here. But Dmitri is walking into a trap. His jaw tightened. And if we don't move now, so are you. Lena's mind raced. Can you reach him? Warn him. I tried. They are jamming communications. Then we go to him. The man stared at her. Are you insane? You'll be killed. So will he. He can handle himself. Not if he thinks I'm safe. Lena's voice hardened. He'll be distracted, reckless. You know I'm right. The man cursed under his breath. Then he grabbed her arm. Come on. They moved quickly through the house, slipping through side doors and hidden passages Lena hadn't known existed. Behind them, she heard shouting. Footsteps. The sound of furniture being overturned. They'd been discovered. Run, the man shouted, shoving her toward the garage. Lena ran. Her lungs burned. Her feet slipped on cold concrete. But she didn't stop. She burst into the garage just as the door exploded inward behind her. The man spun, raising his gun, and was hit with a bullet that dropped him instantly. Lena screamed. More men poured in. 3, 4. Too many. She backed toward the cars, her hands raised. The older man from the office stepped forward, his gun trained on her chest. Lena Volkov, he said. You've caused a lot of trouble. I didn't ask for any of this. No, but you chose him. And that's enough. He raised the gun. Lena closed her eyes. And then the garage exploded with gunfire. Dmitri. He burst through the side entrance. His gun raised, his face a mask of fury. He moved like death itself. Fast, precise, unstoppable. 3 shots. 3 bodies. The older man turned, firing, but Dmitri was already moving. He tackled the man to the ground, and Lena heard the sickening crack of bone. Then silence. Dmitri rose slowly, breathing hard, blood on his hands. He looked at her. "You were supposed to stay in the room," he said hoarsely. Lena's legs gave out. She collapsed to her knees, shaking uncontrollably. Dmitri crossed the space in seconds, pulling her into his arms. "I've got you," he murmured. "I've got you." Lena clung to him, her face buried in his chest, her entire body trembling. "They were going to kill me," she whispered. "I know. They said it was a trap, that you walked right into it." "I know." His grip tightened. "But I came back for you." She pulled back, looking up at him. "Why?" "Because nothing matters more than you." His voice broke. Not territory, not power, not revenge. Nothing. Lena's breath caught. Behind them, more footsteps. More of Dmitri's men, arriving late, securing the area. But Dmitri didn't move, didn't let go. He just held her, his face buried in her hair, his body shaking with something that felt like fear. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered. "You didn't. But I almost did." Lena cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. "I'm here. I'm alive. We both alive." Dmitri's eyes were wet, and for the first time since she'd met him, Lena saw him cry. Not silently, not controlled, but fully, completely, the way a man cries when he realizes he's been given something he never thought he'd deserve. "I love you," he said, the words torn from somewhere deep. "God help me, Lena, I love you." Lena's heart shattered and rebuilt itself in the same breath. "I love you too," she whispered. And in the wreckage of a war that hadn't ended, surrounded by bodies and blood and the ghosts of a past neither of them could escape, they held each other like the world might tear them apart at any moment. Because it might. But in that moment, they chose each other anyway. The house was no longer a sanctuary. It was a crime scene. Dmitri's men worked through the night, removing bodies, scrubbing blood from floors, repairing the damage Volkov's attack had left behind. Lena sat in the library, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the fire. She couldn't stop shaking. Dmitri entered quietly, 2 glasses of whiskey in his hands. He offered one to her. She took it but didn't drink. He sat beside her, close but not touching. For a long time, neither of them spoke. "This is my life," Dmitri said finally. "This violence, this blood, it never ends." Lena stayed into the amber liquid. "I know. You shouldn't have to live it. I chose to. You didn't choose this." His voice was tight. "You didn't choose to almost die in my garage." "No, but I chose you." She looked at him. "And this is part of you." Dmitri's jaw clenched. "I can send you away. Somewhere safe. Somewhere Volkov will never find you." "And you?" "I stay. Finish this." "Alone?" "Yes." Lena set the glass down, her hands trembling. "So that's it. You love me, but you're willing to send me away." "Because I love you." He turned to face her fully, his eyes burning. "Don't you understand? Loving me will get you killed." "Maybe, or maybe it won't." Lena leaned forward. "Maybe we survive this. Together." "You don't know what you're asking." "Then tell me." Dmitri stood abruptly, pacing toward the fire. "Volkov won't stop. Not now. Not after tonight. He'll come at me with everything he has. And he'll use you to do it. So we end him first." Dmitri spun around, shock flickering across his face. "What?" "You heard me." Lena stood, her chin lifted. We stop running. Stop hiding. We go after him. You have no idea what that means. I know it means war. It means death. Dimitri's voice rose. It means watching people you care about die. It means becoming the very thing you've spent your whole life afraid of. Or it means surviving. Lena crossed the room, stopping inches from him. It means taking back control. It means choosing to fight instead of waiting to be destroyed. Dimitri stared at her, something like a flickering in his eyes. You're serious, he breathed. Yes. You'd stand beside me. In this. I'd stand beside you in anything. His hand rose, trembling, cupping her face. You shouldn't have to. But I want to. Lena's voice softened. Don't you see, Dimitri? I'm not running anymore. Not from this life. Not from you. Not from what we could be if we stopped being afraid. Dimitri's breath shuddered, and then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was fierce, desperate. The kind of kiss that tasted like war and promises and a future neither of them were sure they'd live to see. When they pulled apart, his forehead rested against hers. If we do this, he whispered, there's no going back. I don't want to go back. Lena. I want to move forward. With you. Dimitri's eyes closed, and when they opened again, the fear was gone, replaced by something harder, darker, determination. Then we do it together, he said. The war began at dawn. Dimitri didn't waste time. He called in every favor, mobilized every man, reached out to allies he hadn't spoken to in years. Lena watched him woke, her heart pounding. This was what he was, what he'd always been. Not a monster, not a captor, a king, a warrior, a man who commanded empires with a single word. And she stood beside him, not as a prisoner, not as a burden, as an equal. Volkov's operating out of a warehouse on the South Docks, one of Dimitri's lieutenants said, spreading a map across the desk. His fortified. 20 men, maybe more. Dimitri leaned forward, his eyes scanning the layout. Exits. 2. Front and back. Both guarded. Then we create a third. He pointed to a section of the building. Explosives here. Draw them out. Then we hit them from 3 sides. And Volkov. Mine. Dimitri's voice was ice. No one touches him but me. The men nodded. Lena stepped forward. I'm coming with you. Every head turned. Dimitri's jaw tightened. No. You said we're doing this together. I said we're in this together. Not that you're walking into a war zone. I've already been in a war zone. Lena's voice was firm. Your garage. Remember? Dimitri's hands clenched. That was different. How? Because I wasn't prepared. This time, I am. And so am I. They stayed at each other, the tension between them electric. Finally, one of the men cleared his throat. With respect, sir, she's right. Volkov thinks she's a weakness. Seeing her there, standing beside you, it'll throw him off. Dimitri's eyes never left Lena's. Or it'll make him more desperate, more dangerous. I can handle it, Lena said quietly. You don't know that. Neither do you. Dimitri's breath came hard and fast. Then he turned away, his hands bracing on the desk. Fine, he said finally, but you stay behind me. Always. You don't move unless I tell you to. And if I say run, I run, Lena finished. I promise. Dimitri turned back, and the look in his eyes made her heart ache. If anything happens to you, it won't. But if it does, then we die together. Lena stepped closer, her hand finding his. No running, no hiding. Together. Dimitri pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her. You're going to be the death of me, he murmured into her hair. Or your salvation. He laughed, a broken, breathless sound. Maybe both. Before we close this chapter, take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below. Every small gesture helps the next story find its way to you. The convoy left at midnight. 6 cars, 30 men. Enough firepower to level a city block. Lena rode with Dmitri, her hand clasped in his, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Are you afraid? Dmitri asked quietly, terrified. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. What about you? He glanced at her, and in the darkness, she saw the truth. I'm more afraid of losing you than I am of anything Volkov can do to me. Lena squeezed his hand. Then don't lose me. I'll die before I let that happen. That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be. The warehouse loomed ahead, dark and massive against the night sky. Dmitri's men moved into position, silent, efficient, deadly. He turned to Lena one last time. Last chance to stay in the car, he said. Not a chance. He smiled. It was sad, beautiful, resigned. I love you, he said. I love you too. And then the world exploded. Fire lit the night sky. The explosion tore through the warehouse's east wall, sending metal and concrete flying. Men shouted. Guns fired. Chaos erupted like a living thing. Dmitri moved forward, and Lena followed. She'd expected fear to paralyze her, expected her body to freeze. Instead, she felt clarity. Sharp, cold, absolute. This was survival, and she'd been surviving her whole life. Dmitri's men poured through the breach, their weapons raised. Volkov's men scrambled to respond, but they were disorganized. Panicked. Dmitri had planned perfectly. He moved through the smoke like a ghost, his gun raised, his shots precise. Every bullet found its mark. Every movement was calculated. Lena stayed close, her heart pounding, her eyes scanning for threats. A man appeared from the shadows, his gun swinging toward Dmitri's back. Left! Lena screamed. Dmitri spun, firing, and the man dropped. He glanced back at her, something like pride flickering in his eyes. Stay close, he said. They pushed deeper into the warehouse. Bodies littered the floor. The air stank of gunpowder and blood. Lena's hand shook, but she didn't stop moving. And then she saw him. Nikolai Volkov. He stood at the far end of the warehouse, surrounded by the last of his men. Tall, broad, his face twisted with rage. Kozlov, he roared. You think this ends here? Dmitri stepped forward, his gun trained on Volkov's chest. It ends now. You've lost your mind. Volkov laughed, a bitter, broken sound. All of this, for a woman. For my woman. Volkov's gaze shifted to Lena, and the hatred in his eyes made her stomach turn. She's nothing, he spat. Just another whore playing dress-up in a dead woman's shadow. Dmitri's finger tightened on the trigger, but before he could fire, Volkov moved. He grabbed one of his own men, used him as a shield, and fired. The bullet grazed Dmitri's shoulder. He staggered, cursing, and Lena lunged forward without thinking. Dmitri! Everything slowed. She saw Volkov raise his gun, saw it aim at Dmitri's head, and she threw herself between them. The shot rang out. Pain exploded through her side, white-hot and blinding. She collapsed, gasping, her vision blurring. Lena! Dmitri's voice tore through the chaos. He caught her before she hit the ground, his hands pressing against the wound in her side. No, 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 his voice cracked. Stay with me. Lena, stay with me. She tried to speak, but blood filled her mouth. Around them, gunfire erupted again. Dmitri's men surged forward, cutting down Volkov's remaining forces. Volkov tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Dmitri's lieutenant put a bullet in his knee. He fell, screaming. Dmitri didn't look, didn't care. His entire focus was on Lena. You're going to be okay, he said, his hands slick with her blood. You hear me? You're going to be fine. Lena's vision swam. She could see his face, twisted with fear and grief and rage. She tried to smile. Told you. I'd stand beside you. Don't. His voice broke. Don't you dare say goodbye. Not goodbye. Her eyes fluttered closed. Dmitri screamed her name, but the sound was distant, fading. The last thing she felt was his arms around her, holding her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. And then there was nothing. Time became meaningless. Lena floated in darkness, weightless and untethered. Voices echoed around her. Dimitri's voice. Others she didn't recognize. Losing too much blood. Stabilize her. If we don't. She tried to reach for them, but her body wouldn't respond. Was this death? Was this how it ended? No. Somewhere deep inside, something pulled at her. Something fierce and stubborn and unwilling to let go. Dimitri's voice, clearer now. Closer. Come back to me, he whispered. Please, Lena, come back. She felt his hand in hers. Warm. Real. I can't do this without you, he continued, his voice breaking. I don't want to. I've spent my whole life alone, and then you walked into that ballroom and said her words and looked at me with her eyes, and I thought. He choked. I thought maybe I'd been given a second chance. A chance to do it right this time. To love someone and not lose them. Lena tried to squeeze his hand. To tell him she was there. That she was fighting. But her body still wouldn't move. I love you, Dmitri said hoarsely. I love you. And I'm sorry I dragged you into this. Sorry I couldn't protect you. Sorry I. His voice broke completely. And in that moment, something shifted. Lena felt herself moving toward the sound of his voice. Toward the warmth of his hand. Toward the life she'd fought so hard to claim. Her eyes opened. The room was white. Sterile. A hospital. Maybe. Or a safe house. Dmitri sat beside her bed, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Lena's voice came out as a rasp. Dmitri. His head snapped up. For a moment, he just stayed at her, as if he didn't believe what he was seeing. Then he surged forward, his hands cupping her face, his eyes wet. You're awake, he breathed. Oh God, you're awake. Lena tried to smile, but even that hurt. Told you, not goodbye. He laughed, a broken, tearful sound, and pressed his forehead to hers. Don't ever do that again, he whispered fiercely. Don't ever step in front of a bullet for me again. Can't promise that. Lena, you'd do it for me. He pulled back, his eyes searching hers. That's different. How? Because my life doesn't matter. Not without you. Lena's breath caught. She reached up, her hand trembling, and touched his face. Your life matters, she whispered. To me. Dmitri closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. They stayed like that for a long time. Just breathing. Just being alive. Finally, Lena asked. Volkov. Dead. Your men. Some wounded. None lost. Then it's over. Dmitri opened his eyes. For now. Will there be others? Always. His thumb brushed her cheek. That's the life I lead. The life I'm offering you. I know. And you still want it. Lena smiled weakly. I took a bullet for you, didn't I? That's not funny. Little bit funny. He kissed her then, soft, careful, reverent. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet again. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me, he said. I already don't. You will. When the pain sets in. Then you'll just have to distract me. How? Lena's smile widened. I'm sure you'll think of something. Dmitri laughed, a real laugh this time, full and warm and alive. And in that hospital room, surrounded by the aftermath of violence and war, they chose each other again. Not because it was easy, but because love, real love, never was. 3 months later, Lena stood in the garden, her hand resting on her side where the scar still pulled when she moved too quickly. The wound had healed, mostly, but some scars ran deeper than flesh. She'd learned that the hard way. The house was different now, quieter. Dmitri had pulled back from the front lines, delegating Ma to his lieutenants. He said it was strategic, that a king who showed weakness invited challenges. But Lena knew the truth. He'd nearly lost her, and that had changed him. "You're supposed to be resting." Dimitri's voice came from behind her. She turned, smiling. "I've been resting for 3 months. Doctor said 6. Doctor's paranoid. Doctor's smart." He crossed the garden, his hands sliding into his pockets. He looked different too. Lighter, somehow, as if a weight he'd carried for decades had finally begun to lift. He stopped beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. They stood in silence, watching the sun set over the walls that surrounded them. "Do you ever regret it?" Dmitri asked quietly. "Staying?" Lena glanced at him. "Do you regret asking me to?" "Every day." "Liar." He smiled. "I regret what it cost you. The bullet, the pain, the life you could have had." "You mean the life where I'm drowning in debt, watching my mother die in a hospital I can't afford?" Lena shook her head. "That wasn't living, Dmitri. That was surviving. There's a difference." "And this? What is this?" Lena turned to face him fully, her hand finding his. "This is living," she said softly. "Messy, dangerous, imperfect, but alive." Dimitri's jaw tightened. "You deserve better." "I deserve to choose, and I choose you." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her carefully, always careful now, always aware of the wound that had nearly taken her from him. "I don't know what I did to deserve you," he murmured into her hair. "You loved someone who couldn't stay, and you learned to love someone who could." Dmitri pulled back, his eyes searching hers. "Your grandmother made her choice. I made mine." Lena's voice was firm. "I'm not her, Dmitri, and this isn't her story." "No." His hand rose, cupping her face. "It's ours." "Yes." He kissed her then, soft and slow, and Lena felt the last of her grandmother's ghost slip away between them. Some loves were meant to haunt, others were meant to heal. That night, they sat in the library. The painting of Katia had been moved, not destroyed, but relocated to a private room where Dmitri could visit her memory without living in it. In its place hung something new, a photograph of Lena, taken in the garden just last week. Her hair caught in the wind. Her smile genuine, alive. "It's strange," Dmitri said, staring at it. "For 20 years, I've been in love with a memory. And now?" Lena prompted. "Now I'm in love with you. And you're real." Lena moved to stand beside him, her hand slipping into his. "Does that scare you?" she asked. "Terrifies me." He looked at her. "Because memories can't leave, can't die, can't break your heart again. But you." "I'm human." "Yes." "Mortal." "Yes." "Capable of hating you." "Yes." Lena squeezed his hand. "But also capable of loving you. Right here, right now. Not from a distance, not from the past, but standing beside you." Dimitri's breath shuddered. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," he admitted. "For this to be taken away." "It might be." Lena's voice was honest, unflinching. "Tomorrow, or next year, or 50 years from now, nothing is guaranteed." "Then why stay?" "Because right now, this moment, is real. And I'd rather have a real moment with you than a lifetime of safe, hollow ones without you." Dmitri turned fully, his hands gripping her shoulders. "You're the bravest person I've ever met," he said hoarsely. "Or the most foolish." Maybe both. Lena laughed. Probably both. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Not with desperation this time, but with gratitude, with wonder, with love that had learned to exist in the present instead of the past. Marry me, he said suddenly. Lena froze. What? Marry me. His eyes were bright, intense. Not because I own you, not because you owe me, but because I want to choose you every day for the rest of my life. And I want you to choose me. Lena's heart hammered. Dimitri. I know it's insane. I know my world is violent and dangerous and… Yes. He stopped. Stead. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. For a moment, he looked stunned, as if he'd expected rejection, expected her to finally come to her senses and run. Then his face broke into the most beautiful smile Lena had ever seen. He lifted her, careful of her side, always careful, and spun her around, laughing like a man who'd forgotten how. When he set her down, his forehead pressed to hers. I'm going to spend every day proving I'm worthy of that yes, he whispered. You already are. Liar. Hopeful, romantic. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Lena felt the future unfold before them. Not perfect, not safe, but theirs. The wedding was small. Dimitri had wanted to give her something grand, a ballroom, hundreds of guests, a celebration befitting a queen. But Lena had asked for simple. Just them. Just the garden. Just the people who mattered. Dimitri's most trusted men stood as witnesses. Lena wore a simple white dress that caught the afternoon light. No veil. No pretense. Just a woman marrying the man she'd chosen. When Dimitri took her hands, his voice was steady. I, Dmitri Kozlov, take you, Lena Volkov, as my wife. Not as my possession. Not as my prisoner, but as my partner, my equal, my heart. Lena's eyes filled. I, Lena Volkov, take you, Dmitri Kozlov, as my husband, not because you saved me, but because you let me save you too. His breath caught. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me. But Dmitri didn't wait. He pulled Lena close and kissed her, and the small crowd erupted in applause and laughter. When they pulled apart, Lena was crying. I love you, she whispered. I love you too, Dmitri said. In this life, and whatever comes after. Years passed. Not easily. Not without struggle. There were more threats. More enemies. More nights when Lena lay awake wondering if this would be the day she'd lose him. But there were also mornings. Mornings where she'd wake to find Dmitri watching her, his eyes soft, his hand gentle on her face. What are you thinking? She'd ask. That I'm the luckiest bastard alive, he'd reply. And she'd laugh, because despite everything, despite the violence and the scars and the life that should have broken them, they'd survived. Together. One evening, many years after that first gala, Lena found herself back in the library. She stood before the photograph of herself, now faded with age. Beside it hung a new one, a family, Dmitri, Lena, and a child, a daughter with dark hair and bright eyes, named Katia, not to replace the woman who'd come before, but to honor her, to remember that love, even when it ends, leaves something beautiful behind. Dmitri entered, his hair now touched with gray, his movement slower but no less certain. What are you thinking? He asked, echoing the question they'd asked each other 1,000 times. Lena turned to him, her hand finding his. I'm thinking about how my grandmother used to tell me that phrase. Asterisk Tyanis Naish. KuYane Samam Dele dat asterisk you don't know who I really am. And I think I finally understand what she meant. What's that? Lena smiled. She wasn't talking about secrets. She was talking about becoming. About how we're never just one thing. We're every choice we make. Every person we love. Every moment we choose to stay instead of run. Dimitri's eyes glistened. She loved you, you know, Lena continued. Even when she left. Even when she'd built a new life. She loved you. I know. His voice was rough. But she loved herself more. And that's why she survived. And why I'm here. Yes. Lena leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. Do you still miss her? She asked. Every day. He paused. But I have you. And that's more than I ever thought I'd deserve. You deserve everything. So do you? They stood there, two people who'd found each other across the wreckage of a love that had come before. Two people who'd learned that the heart could hold grief and joy in the same breath. That love didn't erase pain. It just made it bearable. Outside, the sun set over the walls that no longer felt like a prison. Inside, a family gathered for dinner, laughter and warmth filling rooms that had once echoed with loneliness. And in the library, beside a faded photograph and a painting of a woman who'd loved first, Dmitri and Lena held each other, not because they had to, but because they'd chosen to, every single day. If stories like this linger in your heart long after they end, don't leave just yet. Like, comment, subscribe, and check the description box below, and let the next story find you when the night grows quiet again. Asterisk some loves are written in the stars. Asterisk. Asterisk others are written in blood and choice and the quiet moments between breaths. Asterisk. Asterisk this was the latter. Asterisk. Asterisk and it was enough. Asterisk.